Hey, deserving listeners, it's time to continue watching the Paris Hilton documentary. I think it's called This is Paris. It's on YouTube. And let's see if anything of interest comes out of my face.
My last vacation was probably when I was 15. It's just been nonstop work, but for some reason it's hard for me to relax. New app on my phone which tells you like the amount of time you spend on social media. Usually I'm like up to here 16 hours and 19 minutes. When you add up all those hours in your life, it's literally like years of your life spent just like looking at a phone. It's just beyond.
So there's a lot of talk over the past 10 years about this topic of people are addicted to their phones, they're addicted to social media, they're narcissistic, these kinds of things. And yeah, I suppose, but I find that the public discourse is a little black and white about the issue. There's nothing wrong with liking social media. There's nothing wrong with getting a little bit of self-esteem from social media. We tend to shame this sort of thing. We tend to look at people that are on social media a lot and say, oh, shame on you, you're narcissistic, there's something wrong with you, that kind of thing. It's not inherently wrong. I'm quite positive that in 100 years or some point in the future, our feelings, and they have been changing over time, will evolve to a point where we don't shame influencers as much as we do today. There's something about, particularly around this time, we tend to really shame what we're framing as influencer. In fact, the term influencer has become kind of like a bad word. It's like, oh, look at the influencers over there. And why is this? Well, I think there is a legitimate concern that people will have of just like, well, how are you doing? Are you really happy, or are you just trying to make it seem like you're happy because the only way you feel like you could be happy is by getting a lot of likes on Instagram? Because if that's the only way that you're getting happiness, which it seems like Paris might be, then I worry about you, and I would hope that you could find other ways. What are the barriers to you getting other needs met in your life through other ways of communicating with other people? If that was being communicated, that'd be fine. That isn't usually what's being communicated. It's like, shame on you for being narcissistic, you're vapid, you're empty, there's something wrong with you. That is almost never the case, by the way. The other thing that actually happens for people is you actually can be behaviorally addicted to social media and your phone. Your phone and the various apps are specifically designed to trigger certain responses in your brain. The way a chicken in a cage gets a little nugget of food but for pressing a button, so does our phone. Our phones are designed by marketers to grab our attention, to keep us on it. Very intelligent people that are making billions and billions of dollars, these people spend a lot of time doing research trying to figure out how to hack your brain, and they have succeeded, clearly. And so we have to be careful as consumers, in the same way that if you were going to take a medication, or if you were going to take something that we all know to be addictive, like cigarettes or caffeine or alcohol or cocaine, we as a society have to say, like, well, if I just go into this without thinking, I might become dependent on this, and it might cause a lot of problems in my life. The same goes for our phones. If we don't resist on some level, if we don't have a plan for how to push back on that psychological ding, 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 then behaviorally we might have a problem. Not for everyone, though. Now, the people that I find clinically who end up having problems with any behavioral habit or with substances is that without those things, they're suffering. That deep down, they're walking around in a pretty much a constant state of suffering or distress. And the Instagram or the cocaine or the gambling or the alcohol or the heroin takes away those bad feelings for them. And so we don't want to look at people that are on their phones all the time and say, what's wrong with you? Get off the phone. What we should be asking is, what are they running away from that the phone actually helps them with? You know, when people come to me with these problems, I don't say, okay, let's try to get you away from the phone. What I say is, why are you turning to that in the first place? What traumas are unhealed and are causing you so much distress that you need this? And so I don't say get off the phone. What I say, let's heal your traumas. Let's work on that. And your phone usage will just work itself out, because you'll deal with it the way people deal with it normally when they're not running away from a trauma. We as a society are not helping traumatized individuals. A lot of people are traumatized, a lot more people than we'd like to admit. I would anecdotally say that most people have at least a minor trauma that they are currently suffering from, whether they might not have full-blown PTSD, but they have some sort of reactivity to that trauma. In fact, I might say everyone has at least one minor trauma that they have reactivity to. And a lot of people have full-blown a lifetime of traumas that they are in a constant state of demoralization, distress, sadness, depression, anxiety, lack of trust in other people, being triggered, this sort of thing. And so we have a increase in alcohol use, social media addiction, gambling addiction, spending addiction, sex addiction, heroin, opiates, cocaine, meth, Adderall. We see it all. And as a society, we're like, well, those people don't have willpower. No, that I've never seen that clinically. I suppose it's possible for some, but I've never seen that clinically. I've always, 100% of the time. And when I started out as a therapist, I believed the general notions that were in society and among a lot of clinicians, that it's like, oh, it's a behavioral problem. We have to, get them to abstain and get them away from those kinds of things. And yes, that's a good effort, but it has to be also in parallel with trauma recovery for a lot of people. Not everyone, but for a lot of people. How did I learn that? Well, I learned that because clients taught me that. As time went on, I was like, why isn't this 12-step program working? Why isn't this cognitive behavioral therapy working? What's going on here? We keep running into the same problems. And I would discover, oh, there's this other thing. Our bodies react to trauma and it holds on to it. When you have a problem with your plumbing in your kitchen, well, everyone knows who to call. You call a plumber. But when you are suffering from distress from chronic trauma problems, for whatever reason, we have not sent the message out to people that they need to find a therapist who specializes in trauma. And that's another issue if you're thinking for yourself, like, oh, maybe I should go to therapy. A lot of you have emailed me, and it's music to my ears, by the way, that by watching this YouTube channel, it's inspired you to try to find a therapist that's a good fit for you. Many therapists do not specialize in trauma. And of those therapists who don't know that much about trauma, some of them don't know they don't know about trauma. I'm here to tell you. I actually was one of those therapists early in my career. I thought I knew about trauma. I did not really know about trauma. It took me well into my career and many years of further study and supervision and practical experience to understand trauma in its reality. It's a very complicated thing. If you're traumatized, you have to go to someone who really understands trauma in all of its various different forms and how to treat it, because it's very complicated. It's not intuitive, and it's not often taught in graduate school. For whatever reason, you can graduate and become a licensed clinician without ever taking a class on trauma. Just think about that. For whatever reason, our field doesn't understand the importance of teaching our clinicians about trauma. I'm guessing that'll change over the next number of decades. But anyway, so when we look at Paris and we see her, she's like she's on vacation. She's in this beautiful location and she lays down and she's like, okay, I finally have a vacation. I'm going to try to relax. And she gets bored and then she picks up her phone and then she's posting and she's doing all these things. As a society, we look at that and we say, gross, there's something wrong with you, you're empty, you're narcissistic, you're materialistic, what's wrong with you? What I see is a traumatized individual who has found a solution to her trauma because society and clinicians have not provided her a better solution.
You've taken a few test runs, haven't we all?
Yeah, I finally found my perfect other half. From the outside, it would look like just the perfect couple because I'm posting all these really happy photos and amazing quotes.
Here's Hilton addressing her split with Chris Zilka and Tina.
But deep down, I just felt kind of trapped. When you get married, you're forced to grow up.
Were you afraid to grow up?
I am afraid to grow up.
Okay, so more data along these lines where she says she's afraid to grow up. I hope that someone asks her, what exactly are you afraid of? Because that's the key. Is she afraid that she's going to disappoint people? Is she afraid that someone's going to hurt her? Is she afraid that no one will like her if she acts like an adult? Let's find out.
I know I am grown up. I don't know. I think after being at those schools, you lose your childhood.
Okay, so that's interesting. that she's saying when you go to those schools, you lose your childhood. And this is something that I will see in people, in a variety of contexts. Usually it's not because they were sent to multiple expensive emotional corrective camps or whatever she called them. Usually it's kids will lose their childhood because they're parentified, meaning that the parents were dysfunctional in some way and the child had to be elevated to take care of the parents or take care of the younger kids to replace the lack of parenting from the parents. And so people will grow up with a syndrome. Some of you that watched the Married at First Sight reaction videos, we saw this in Derek and Katie, and each of them had a different reaction to it. Katie had a reaction of like she's going to be super responsible and she's going to hate people who are irresponsible. That's a simplistic way of putting it. And for Derek, he retained his childhood into adulthood because he didn't get it when he was growing up. And so for Paris, she's more like Derek. Because she didn't get her childhood, she didn't get to be a kid when she was a kid, that she is going to doggedly hold on to her childhood and say, you can't take my childishness and my youthful lifestyle away from me because now I'm in control and I'm going to do this in spite of those people who wanted me to grow up. I'm not going to grow up because you can't make me. So I wonder if that's what's going on for her. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with perpetually being youthful and being childish. There's no inherent harm in that. But it can result in you not being able to get your needs met. In that, for her, it sounds like as she found someone to be engaged with, I don't know how their relationship was going, but what she was saying was she ended it because the marriage was requiring her to grow up. Her partner probably needed her to be responsible and to have mutual empathy back and forth. I don't know about the state of the relationship, but that seems to be the implication. And she didn't want to grow up. She didn't want to graduate to that level. So because of the fact that she was denied a childhood when she was younger, and so she's holding on tight to a child, lifestyle into her adulthood. And deep down, we could assume that she needs to have closeness, she needs to have attachment. That could be with a romantic partner, it could be with friends or whatever. And so her need to hold on to her youth denies her the opportunity to have close attachments with other people. And so that's an example of how that retention of childishness can actually interfere with your own needs. And that's often what defenses will do. We develop a defense to defend against outside, incursions on our rights and our needs, and then we retain those defenses later in life, and they actually prevent us from getting our needs met because we don't need them anymore. She doesn't need to hold on to her childhood anymore because she's free to do what she wants. She has freedom. She can act however she wants now. She's not going to be forced to go to a camp.
When I'm playing, that's my time, like when I have fun. There's nothing like it. People talk shit and say that I'm not DJing live. At my first concert in Brazil for 30,000 people, the guy came up for 1 second just to turn the volume, and that picture just went viral. It was like Paris wasn't DJing, this guy was doing it. So I really have to prove myself, especially being a woman in this industry as well, because it's like a boy's world.
That is true. I used to hang out with a lot of DJs. I know that sounds sort of pompous to say, but I have friends, me and Umberto, if you know from the podcast, we were friends with a lot of Seattle local DJs and would hang out with them a lot and would sort of see behind the scenes. In fact, I was asked by a club and DJs to actually I'm a musician and I write music, and I had a phase where I did some dance music. You can actually listen to it if you go to Spotify and go to Bread Knife Incident, that's my band, and go to Cozy, the album Cozy. There's some dance songs on that I wrote and recorded. And I would perform them in clubs. And so anyway, I can concur with Paris that it is a boy's world. And I did know some women DJs, and they would talk about that, about how, one, they would be shut out, and two, that people would see them as some guy must be behind the scenes helping them with their DJing, or they're not actually DJing. And they would have to be even better than the men to prove to society and the other DJs that they had value and this sort of thing.
Jesus Christ.
can't just drop a computer before set. What should happen? The computer could break. Please don't close it.
How should I keep it open? How?
Can someone who's not gonna drop it take it? Thank you. Please stop. Do not do this before my set. Alex, can you tell him to chill the out? This is up. I'm playing Tomorrowland. He needs to chill the out. I'm sick of this shit.
Alex looks like he's intoxicated, not sure. He was complaining that she was doing a lot of promotion. And then she is about to go on stage and he isn't being very considerate. He dropped her computer. He's not being very nice to her. He's bickering with her. And she's saying, I'm about to go on stage. I need you to be supportive. And then he just wanders off. And then Paris is upset and she's getting angry. This is an interesting side to her right now. I don't know what to think of it. It just looks like a conflict between two people that is common to everyone. And the dog is barking at someone at the door. Do I need to go there? But it is an interesting side of Paris. Definitely not a side we've seen thus far in the documentary of kind of rage.
I'm playing in 6 minutes. So insecure. Stop! Are you really doing that before my set? Okay, then never speak to me again. Tell him to chill the out.
Okay, so again, I think a lot of people can get into fights like this. She's stressed out about going on stage.
I love you. Please stop. Please stop. Please.
No, don't love me.
I'm begging you. Stop! I started 4 minutes. Please! I started 3 minutes. Do not ruin my set. Can I have his f***ing bracelets cut off? Can we cut his bracelets off? Can we cut his f***ing bracelets off? He's f***ing ruining my entire set. Okay, please stop. Please, please. I'm gonna start crying on my set. Please. Jesus Christ. God. My God. Are you psychotic?
This is troubling. So we're not quite sure what's happening here, but it looks like he's pestering her as she's about to go on stage. And she's like begging him to stop. This is troubling. This is very troubling. I don't know exactly what's happening, but that's what it looks like what's happening.
Playing the biggest festival of my life.
Give me a kiss right now. Don't be like that. You did this
I did this?
because of you.
F***ing apologize. Stop. Get the f*** away from me. Give me your f***ing bracelet. F***ing ass. I want him out of here. He's f***ing kicked out. Done.
Come on, let's go. In the van.
So we don't have enough information to tell us as to what's going on here. What's their ongoing relationship like? What exactly happened there? We're just seeing these little bits and pieces. So I don't know if we have anything to go off of in terms of conceptualizing what went wrong there. But it is notable that for Paris, when she was having some anger towards her boyfriend, or whatever she calls him, the guy that she's dating, that she can actually call upon her people to kick him out. She was saying, take away his bracelet, revoke his entitlement to backstage and throw him in a van and get him out. That's an interesting element that I guess people of privilege have. It's just like, I don't like this person and I need you to get rid of this person.
Bye, Felicia. Way too many computers. This is not all like different relationships, but anytime I do have a new boyfriend, I always get a full new computer because they always break into my computers, or they'll scream at me and threaten me. Give me your password now.
What? I was like, wow, she has a lot of computers. That's interesting. And she kept all of them. And she's saying the reason why she has so many computers is that every time she changes boyfriends, she gets a new computer, which I was like, what? And then she says, because they always demand that they give them the password so they can break into her computer and look at everything. Wow, that is interesting. I've never heard that before. I've talked about this a lot. Jealousy can result in anger, can result in abusive behavior. And at the basis of it is a fear of abandonment, a fear that you're going to lose someone, a fear you're going to lose attachment. And for some people, they are particularly triggered by that. Maybe they were abandoned a lot as a kid, whatever. And they get very worried and they get very scared. And because we're taught that we can't express our vulnerability and our fears, we mask that with anger. Sometimes we even mask it to ourselves that we're afraid and hurt. And we just feel anger. And then the anger motivates control and ruins the relationship. So we realize our underlying fear is, our underlying fear is, oh my God, I'm going to lose my partner to someone else. They're going to cheat on me and I'm going to lose them. And that's going to make me feel very hurt and I'm going to be in a lot of pain. How do I avoid that? Well, I got to produce anger and then I got to control and the person runs away from you and then you are abandoned.
I've never used any of this stuff. I just buy things and then people put them in here and then I can't see anything because no one organizes anything.
You've got so much stuff.
Yeah.
And you're always saying to me you need to make your $1 billion. Like that's what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Make $1 billion.
To spend it. That's just my goal in life. Like when I was a teenager, I always wanted to make 100 million. I was like, when I do that, I'm gonna be happy. And I think once you do your goal, you just want to keep going more and more.
People will often have these goals and they think, oh, if I could just reach that goal, then I'll be happy. And they reach that goal and they're like, wait, I'm not, or I was happy for 5 minutes and now I'm not happy anymore. So, well, what's the solution? And for some people, they'll say, well, maybe I just need more money and then I'll be happy. So when she makes $1 billion, she'll be happy for 5 minutes in all likelihood. And she'll be like, wait, I'm still not happy. What's happening? Well, maybe if I make $10 billion, then I'll be happy. So it's a great question that they're going to ask her of just like, okay, and then what? You get $1 billion, then what?
And then I'll be happy. I'm happy now, sometimes. But it is lonely.
What about Alex?
Okay, so we're hearing so many different pieces of evidence pointing towards the loneliness that she feels. And it might be hard to relate to that given that she's so rich, she has so much power, and she has so many people around her, and she has such a fun life on Instagram. And yet she reports how lonely she is. And to chase $1 billion is not to solve your loneliness. But maybe she believes that she can't solve her loneliness. That's not achievable because she can't trust other people. When you feel like you can't achieve closeness, then you got to look for some other goal and to distract you from the fact that you're lonely and you can't seem to solve that. And what Paris seems to have done, and I don't know, I'd have to ask her, is she's replaced the goal of closeness and attachment security, which is at the basic level of our human needs, and said, well, I'm just going to try to earn a lot of money. Because it's a game, to get $100 million, it's like, yay, I win the game. For us that play video games, you might play a video game and earn $1 billion. It feels good for about 5 minutes, and then you have to play the next video game. So for her, this is the game that she's playing, and a lot of people play these games, whether it's a lot of people play the money game, or they play the bigger house game, or they play the I have 3 cars, or my cars are better than your cars, or I have the perfect looking lawn, or whatever, my hair looks perfect, or I have the perfect collection of coins, or the perfect collection of books. I collect books, clinical books. And if that's a distraction from the pain that you feel like you can't solve, then you just keep doing it.
She's such a beautiful person and such a good girl, and I believe that all of the things that she's gone through have made her stronger. And then she would say things to me after, like, I still have nightmares. I still in the middle of my night, I feel, she would say that. And I always take what people say with a grain of salt. Like, I think, yeah, it did bother her, but it was our way of saving you.
Okay, so the mom is saying that Paris was saying to her that Paris still has nightmares about those camps and about being grabbed and beaten as well. And the mom is saying, okay, I hear that, but you don't understand. That was our way of trying to save you. And this is something that I would see in a lot of parents. They would be in this mode of, I need to save my teenager from themselves. And sometimes that's a viable perspective. If the child is addicted to heroin or the child is anorexic and dwindling away to nothing, then yeah, it's a viable narrative. What I would see is by the time parents would have that narrative of like, look, I'm doing this for your own good. I need to save you from yourself. Parents in this mode often have sort of turned themselves off from their own love and affection for the child because they do that as a way of coping with the worry that they have for a child. When a child is exhibiting a lot of worrisome behaviors to you as a parent, you have a lot of different ways of coping with that. One of the ways is you just turn off your love for the child. You're just like, I can't do this anymore. I can't love this child because if I love them, I'm just beating my head up against the wall. And I'm also just getting so hurt by them. So if I turn myself off to them, then I can actually get to work on this and I can actually save them from themselves. The mom, who knows? It's hard for me to tell. It's impossible for me to tell from what's happening. But there is a possibility that the parents did this. It's interesting we haven't heard from the dad. Is the dad still alive? We haven't heard anything from him about this at all. But the mom is saying that she felt like she had to save Paris from herself. Paris has a narrative of like, not only was that a terrible decision, but I turned myself off from I learned that I can't really depend on my family. I can't love them. They don't love me. And I also learned that I can't really trust anyone because of the way I was treated at the camp. But the mom is basically saying, well, it was all worth it because of what was happening. So let's say, for the sake of argument or a thought experiment, that if we knew all the different details, we would find that the mom was being cold and callous. Now, why would that be? Well, there's a lot of different reasons. One of the reasons is because the mom was raised by parents who were also cold and callous and treated her badly when she was a teenager. The way that the parents were parenting the kids is they were trying to make Paris into a Stepford wife. So they were trying to make her into a good housewife to marry into a good family, marry rich, and be a nice, stay in your lane kind of girl. That what raises some hypotheses for the mom that, say the mom was 15 years old and she wanted to be herself, but her parents forced her to be a Stepford wife, and she felt as though she wasn't being loved in that moment, but she subdued her needs, and to please her parents, she went along with the program. And so she's walking around with this resentment. And so she is going to do the same to her daughter. It's a subconscious motivation. We often will repeat the mistakes that our parents did in this way. And so I wonder if that's what happened. Again, I have no data on that, just what we're seeing in the documentary. All right, well, that does it for that reaction video to the Paris Hilton documentary. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Subscribe if you want to. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.